Hello, and welcome to Dark Hearts with Stacy Lee. Today we are talking about a little-known serial killer who was only caught because one of his victims survived. This is a real story of bravery and survival, but it's also a story about an evil man who did unthinkable things to girls before he was caught. And sadly, there are most likely more victims out there that will never be known, that will never have justice, and there are still, many years later, unanswered questions about this serial killer. Today we are talking about Richard Evonitz, caught by his victim. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more from me. I'm your host, Stacy Lee. Let's begin. On a hot afternoon in June of 2002, 15-year-old Kara Robinson was spending a quiet summer day with her friend Heather in Columbia, South Carolina. Kara was everything a parent could hope for. Intelligent, responsible, and ambitious. She dreamed of becoming a police officer or joining the military, and even at her young age, she already displayed remarkable poise and maturity. That day, Kara and Heather were planning to go to a nearby lake to spend the day. Before they left, Heather's mother asked her to water the flowers in the front yard, but Heather still needed to shower, and so while Heather showered, her friend Kara went out front to do the chore. It was a simple task in a safe suburban neighborhood, something kids do every day. My kids were often asked to water the flowers in pots, at not just my house, but at my parents' house. It's something you never even think about, asking kids to help with summer chores. What Kara did not know, could not have known, was that at that very moment, a predator was circling in a green Pontiac Firebird. Kara noticed the car drive by, and she definitely noticed the car when it turned around and came back down the street a second time. This time, the man pulled into Heather's driveway. The driver, an average-looking man with a clean-cut appearance, pulled into the drive and got out of his car. He was wearing business slacks and a button-down shirt with a baseball cap. He approached Kara with a stack of magazines. He said he was handing out information about a landscaping business and asked Kara, "Is your mom or dad home?" Kara said, "No, this isn't my house. It's my friend Heather's house." The man asked if Heather's mom was home, and Kara said no. The man said, "Well, I'll leave the pamphlets with you, and you can give them to her later." The man moved closer to Kara, and as she reached out to take the pamphlets or the magazines, he made his move. He pressed a gun to Kara's neck and warned her not to scream. Then he forced her into a large plastic storage bin that was already prepared in the back seat of his car, complete with drilled air holes. Kara realized this man had planned this. He was bigger than she was, and he had a gun. He slammed the lid on the bin shut and drove away. I cannot imagine how terrifying this was for Kara, and I think this is a really good example of a case we can learn from. This was 20 plus years ago. We now know you never go to a second location with anyone, even if they have a gun. There's a good chance they're not going to use that gun they are threatening you with, and even if they do, sadly, you're going to end up having terrible things done to you at the second location, and then you'll most likely be killed. It's a tough thing to say, but if you're going to get shot right then and there. You've got a much better chance of surviving than you have if you're taken to a second location. I got in trouble once for passing this information along to one of my daughter's friends. She went home and told her mom, "Well, Stacy said that you're just better off getting shot than you are complying." And her mom called me and was upset about it. And I was like, "Well, I'm sorry, but statistically, it's the truth." For Kara, she was just trying to stay alive. But her nightmare had begun. She rode in silence, balled up in the fetal position inside the storage bin. The man didn't speak at all, but Kara was paying attention as they drove. She counted the stops along the way. She listened for sounds that might be clues as to where she was. She was familiar with this area and wanted to know where she was at. Kara felt it when the man got on the highway and they drove for what she thinks was about 15 minutes. When he got off the freeway, the highway, he pulled over near some trees. The man got out of the car and leaned into the back seat. He lifted the lid to the bin and said, "I'm going to tie you up and I'm going to gag you. Remember, I have a gun." The man was very calm, and Kara decided she was going to go along with him so he would believe that she wasn't going to make trouble for him. The man got back in the car, and they drove again for a short distance. He stopped again and said to Kara, "We're going to get out, and you're not going to scream." Kara remembers hearing noises that she associated with a gas station, and she thought perhaps this man was going to rob the gas station. Instead, the man lifted the bin from the back seat and began to carry it. He took Kara to his second-floor apartment in Lexington, South Carolina. Once inside, he forced Kara to shower and then brought her to his bedroom. Now, remember, this is a 15-year-old girl. She must have been, I wish there was a better word than terrified. I was a 15-year-old girl once, a very long time ago. The thought of some old man like making me take my clothes off and shower and stuff, I can't imagine what she went through. But Kara wasn't just surviving, she was observing. Despite the trauma and fear, she stayed calm and began mentally documenting everything: the location of his apartment, the layout of the rooms, the type of appliances he had, the books on his nightstand, even the brand of cigarettes he smoked. Kara saw a doctor's bill lying on a table, and she memorized the doctor's name. She also took note of the man's personal hygiene products, the medications in the bathroom, and the names printed on prescription bottles. This is a smart girl, a girl who was gathering information, and a girl who wanted to live. The man had lizards and fish in tanks, and so Kara tried asking him about them, trying to make conversation. In her mind, she was going to get out of this, and when she did, she wanted to have all the information she could get in order to tell the police. At one point, the man told Kara that he had been in the military, the Navy, to be precise, and then he began asking Kara questions, and as she answered, he took notes. He asked her full name, if she had a boyfriend, and if she had any sexual experience. Even though Kara's captor was being cordial, she knew why he had taken her. She knew what was coming, and sadly, she was right. The man chained Kara to the bed in the apartment and sexually assaulted her. Then he told her that she would be his new slave. After the assault, the man turned on the TV and said, "Let's see if you're on the news." Well, it had only been about 8 hours at this point, so Kara was not on the news. The man turned to her and said, "Well, nobody misses you." Oh, I hate this guy already. A little bit later on, the man told Kara, "I might let you go. If I do, you can decide what to do next. You can go to the police, but you're just going to be some girl who was raped." Yeah, and now I matter. There is no stigma attached to being a rape victim. There is nothing shameful about being raped, and I know you are in agreement with me on that. Later in the evening, the man told Kara that his name was Richard. He didn't wear a mask. He acted as if she would never leave. He wasn't afraid of Kara seeing his face or knowing his name. That's because he genuinely believed that Kara would never have the opportunity to tell anyone her story. But he was wrong. Kara didn't give up. She was waiting for the right moment. Hours into the ordeal, the man, Richard Evonitz, said, "Well, you've been good so far. I'm going to put you back in the container if you promise not to scream. If you're good, I won't tie you up or gag you." So now, back in the container, Kara began to panic. Richard heard her crying, and so he came back in and removed the lid from the bin. He said, "I'll leave the lid off if you promise to stay quiet," and Kara did. The man left the room and made a phone call. Richard Evonitz was calling his wife. She was out of town. Richard came back into the room and took Kara out of the bin. He said, "You're going to be in here for a few days." He made Kara smoke pot with him, and then he made her take a Valium. Richard Evonitz then handcuffed Kara and pulled out a rope. At the end of the rope was a C-clamp, those clamps that you attach to something and then you twist the screw to close them. Richard attached the C-clamp to the bed, and the C-clamp was attached to the rope. He then took her legs and tied her to the bottom of the bed in the same manner. After roughly 18 hours of harrowing captivity, Kara woke up the next morning before the sun came up to find that her captor had fallen asleep beside her. She reached up and tried to unscrew the C-clamp, holding the rope to the bed, but she couldn't get it unscrewed. Her hands were cuffed, and so she couldn't move them enough to reach the C-clamp. So she pulled the clamp down by her mouth and used her teeth to slowly unscrew the clamp. She got it off the top of the bed frame. She then slowly and quietly sat up and reached for the clamp holding the rope around her legs and feet. She got that one undone as well. Can you imagine the tension and like your heart pounding out of your chest, knowing that you have to be so quiet and he could wake up at any moment? Kara slid off the bed, hoping that Richard wouldn't move. She pulled on a t-shirt and tiptoed through the apartment. She knew that when she opened the front door, it was going to make a sound when she unlocked it. So very slowly, Kara pushed aside a vacuum cleaner near the door and took hold of the lock. In one motion, she unlocked the door as fast as she could, opened the door, and bolted down the stairs, still barefoot and wearing handcuffs. Kara ran into the parking lot and saw two men washing their car. She said, "I was kidnapped. Can you help me?" They immediately called 911. Police were sent to the scene as the two men drove Kara to the nearest police station. I gotta stay calm for this next part. Kara was shocked, and I am disgusted at the reaction she got from the cop at the desk. Kara could tell that the man didn't believe her. You know, there's a lot of talk right now about a certain set of files that no one will release. I want them released, and I don't give a shit who's in them. But why do we need to see the files in order to believe women? We need to see the files to see the names in them, but we need to believe women as well. We just have a real problem believing women, girls in this case. Kara was insistent, telling the cop that she was being truthful. This girl was still handcuffed. She had handcuffs on, and this cop was acting like she was lying. Finally, the cop calls Kara's mother, who confirms that her daughter is in fact missing. Two officers then told Kara that they were going to take her to the hospital, but first they needed her to show them the apartment she fled from. Cops put Kara in the back of a police car, and she led them back to Richard Evonitz complex. Kara told the police that there was also a woman who lived in the apartment. She wasn't home, but she knew that woman had red hair. Why? Kara had paid such close attention that when she was in the bathroom, she took note of long red hairs in a hairbrush lying on the countertop. As the police car pulled into the parking lot, a complex manager was driving around in a golf cart. The cops stopped and asked the manager, "Who is the man that lives in that apartment?" And the manager said, "I know exactly who you're talking about." And he led them right to the front door. The cops knocked, but there was no answer. So the manager let them inside. Richard Evonitz was gone. As Kara was examined at the hospital, officers got a search warrant and went through Richard's apartment. I'm not really sure what this creepy doll collection is, but they went through his mail and they found out where he worked. They pulled his cell phone records as well. They found out what cars Richard owned. During the search, they opened a footlocker they found inside the apartment. In that footlocker was a newspaper from Spotsylvania, Virginia. The headline on that newspaper was from a story about two sisters who'd been abducted and murdered in 1996. The cops were then quite sure they were dealing with a serial offender. The FBI was called in and the manhunt was on. Authorities contacted Richard's wife, who was on vacation with her mother at the time. Can you imagine? You're at Disney World with your mom, and the cops call to tell you that your husband has waited for you to leave town so he could kidnap and sexually assault a 15-year-old girl. If something like that ever happened to me, honestly, I think I'd be the one in jail. Richard's family was shocked, and they agreed to meet with the police. During this meeting, Richard's sister asked to speak with a detective in private. She told the cop that she was quite sure she knew where Richard was. He had called her to say he was in a motel about 30 minutes away. The police were sent to the motel, but once again, Richard was gone by the time they got there. Cops pinged his phone and Richard's location was discovered. He was then spotted by a patrol cop. As soon as he saw that he was being followed, he gunned it and took off. The cops gave chase. Finally, Richard pulled over in Sarasota, Florida. Cops gave the command for Richard to get out of the car. He did not comply. They threatened to send the dog in, but Richard stayed in the car. He then pulled out a gun, put it in his mouth, and pulled the trigger. Richard Evonitz was dead. When Kara found out, she was angry. She wanted her day in court with Richard. And then slowly, information about this man began to come out. Born in 1973, Richard Mark Evonitz had no visible signs of being a serial predator. He was a Navy veteran, employed as a salesman for a water purification company. He had been married and divorced. People who knew him described him as normal, quiet, and hardworking. But behind that facade was a man with a disturbing past. In 1987, Richard Evonitz had been arrested in Florida for exposing himself to a teenage girl and masturbating in front of her. Every time I talk about an incident like that, I think to myself, what in the hell is this guy trying to accomplish? And then I realize he's not trying to get the girl. He's doing this because in his mind, it does something for him. It is so weird. Like, how weird do you have to be to do something like that? Richard pled guilty and was fined but never served jail time. It wouldn't be until Kara's escape that the full scope of his crimes came to light. We would later learn that cops found ropes, handcuffs, weapons, and the exact storage bin Kara was put in inside the apartment. Investigators then learned that Richard used to live in Spotsylvania County, Virginia, the place where two sisters disappeared from and were then found murdered. Their case had gone cold, but the discovery of the newspaper talking about the story in Richard's footlocker reignited the case. And then investigators began to look into Richard Evonitz for other unsolved murders and crimes in that area. 16-year-old Sophia Silva was doing her homework on the front porch of her house when she vanished. An intense search was undertaken for days following her disappearance. And then a month later, Sophia's body was found in a marshy riverbank. She had been strangled to death and then wrapped in plastic before being dumped. The only clue investigators had to go on were some dark blue acrylic fibers found on her body. And then it happened again. On May 1st, 1997, two sisters, Katie Lisk, age 15, and Kristen Lisk, age 12, rode the school bus home to Spotsylvania. The last thing anyone saw was the two sisters standing on their front lawn on Blockhouse Road. Their father came home from work later to find no sign of his daughters, but only Kristen's book bag lying in the front yard. A statewide search was undertaken. No viable suspect was ever identified. Their case had gone cold very quickly. And I know I say this all the time, but I just cannot imagine losing a child in this manner. And now imagine losing two. One day, you've got two beautiful daughters, and the next day, they are both gone. They rode the school bus home from school and vanished in your own front yard. I can't even put my brain around something like that. 5 days after their disappearance, Katie and Kristen's bodies were found. They had been strangled and dumped in the South Anna River. Both girls had been sexually assaulted and then bound with duct tape. Lord, I hope there's a hell. I really do. But when investigators went back to this file after Richard's death, they found there was a clue waiting in the file. There were some small pink fibers, like from a bath mat, and also some dark blue acrylic fibers, the same fibers found on Sophia Silva. Authorities began to dig further into Richard Evonitz's background. On March 2nd, 1996, 25-year-old Alicia Showalter Reynolds left her house in Baltimore, Maryland, to drive to Charlottesville, Virginia, and she never made it. At 6 o'clock that evening, Alicia's car was found abandoned along the highway near Culpeper. Witnesses came forward to say they saw Alicia driving along Route 29 and that she then pulled over and was talking with a man in a blue pickup truck on the side of the road. Alicia's body was later discovered 15 miles southeast of that last known sighting. She was discovered on May 7th, 1996. It has not been confirmed, but investigators believe that Richard Evonitz killed Alicia Reynolds. On September 22nd, 1996, 20-year-old Anne Carolyn McDaniels' burned remains were discovered by two hunters who were training their dogs just 10 miles from where Alicia's body had been found. Anne had cerebral palsy and lived in an adult home for people with disabilities. She was last seen hitchhiking on September 18th, 1996, again on Route 29. Inside Richard Evonitz's footlocker, cops found directions to Alicia and Anne's dump sites. They were scribbled on a piece of paper. Most investigators involved in this case are convinced that Richard Evonitz killed Anne McDaniel as well. Not only is this story frustrating because the killer was never forced to face justice, it's frustrating because the families of the victims will never get any type of closure. They'll never get to stand before Richard Evonitz and tell him what he did to them. They'll never get to give a victim's impact statement. They'll never have the satisfaction of knowing that he's been sent to prison for the rest of his life. Because like so many other killers, Richard Evonitz was, at his core, a coward. He was a monster who hurt countless people, and when it came time to face the music, he took the easy way out. Detective Lott told the Post, "We tried to trace his steps to see if there were any missing girls or kidnapped girls or sexually assaulted girls. We were not able to determine any other victims, but that doesn't mean they're not out there." Kara's courage had brought an end to a serial killer's reign. Her detailed memory, calm demeanor, and ability to think under extreme pressure gave investigators everything they needed. Without Kara's escape, Richard Evonitz likely would have continued to kill. But Kara didn't stop at survival. She went on to work in law enforcement, fulfilling the very dream she thought might die in that apartment. She became an advocate for other survivors of trauma and violence, speaking publicly about resilience and recovery. In 2023, Kara's story was told in the acclaimed Lifetime documentary, Escaping Captivity, the Kara Robinson story. Today, she is not just a survivor, she's a warrior. And Kara is on TikTok if you'd like to follow her. I do. Just search Kara Robinson Chamberlain and her account will come right up.
The thing that happened to me 23 years ago doesn't define me, and what happened to you doesn't define you either. So like what someone else decided to do to you does not define you. So let's like dig into that a little bit more, because I say that a lot and then people are like, but you make it your whole personality. That's not strictly true. What happens on social media is people will find out one thing about you and then they put you into a little category, and that's where they see you. And the videos that go viral here for me are consistently the ones where I tell my story. When my captor said to me, "It's your choice if you go to law enforcement and you're always known as the girl that was raped," that stuck with me. And I knew that I didn't want to be known as that. Like if you know me in my day-to-day life, I probably don't even talk about social media, and I definitely don't talk about what happened to me 23 years ago because I don't think about it unless I get on social media, because people only want to talk about the one thing from me. It's why I will always challenge these types of stereotypes and these types of comments. It's not because it bothers me, it's because it could bother you. So if you have people who are saying that like are treating you like you're defined by the bad thing that happened, or like it's your whole personality, just know that you are complex, you are multifaceted, you are a beautiful, wonderfully made person who's not defined by the thing that happened to you. Who's making it my whole personality? Not me. Not me. My whole personality is I'm a mom, I'm a smartass, I have like really fine-tuned interest in things, but really it's all about activism for me and like giving back and educating. Like that's my whole personality. I don't know. Okay, that's it. Love me, bye.
The story of Kara Robinson Chamberlain is not only a story of horror, it's a story of power. A teenaged girl trapped by a calculating killer turned the tables and became the one who ended up ending his reign of terror. Through strength, focus, and incredible bravery, Kara didn't just escape, she saved countless others. And in doing so, she proved that monsters don't always win. Later on, Kara would say, "He picked the wrong girl." Thank you for joining me today on Dark Hearts with Stacy Lee. I sure appreciate you. This is my podcast, Dark Hearts with Stacy Lee. It's on Apple and Spotify. I post brand new episodes every Monday and Wednesday. Don't forget about our fundraiser. I have a playlist called Fundraisers. If you've got $5 extra, I've got a great cause for you. Join us in helping to get untested DNA kits tested. We're trying to help solve some cold crimes. I always appreciate it when you spend a little bit of your day with me, and I really hope the rest of it is great. There's a lot going on in the world right now. So remember, you're always welcome here. We can turn on the episodes and kind of forget about all the craziness for a bit. Things have to get better. They do. The pendulum has swung very far this way. It has to swing back at some point. I love you guys. Stay safe and be kind to each other, and I will see you next time on Dark Hearts with Stacy Lee. Bye.